And we're live? Well, good. How you doing this morning, Dr. Vibert White? Can you hear me okay? You can't hear me, but Malik can, and so can Mr. Skirv. So,
Yes, I can hear you.
I can't hear him.
yeah,
Yeah, we can hear you,
got,
Dr.
we're going to
Vibert.
have you,
I can't hear Art.
can't hear me. Well, it's okay. Read my lips. We having a good
I
time
can't hear
this
him.
morning. Skirv, how is things, or how are things in Ghana this morning? You're the only
Beautiful.
person on
The
the
weather's
continent.
beautiful. The people are beautiful. The tranquility, peace, and solitude,
Make us
productivity,
jealous.
clarity of mind.
Make us
Look,
want home. Make us
exactly.
want to be home.
Trust me, if I truly answered that question, it would take up the whole hour this show is slotted for.
I,
It's
I,
all
I,
good.
I know it. Okay, well, we got to get this show. We got a great show for you today. And we're going to be talking about a couple of things that have been in the news contemporarily. And I'm going to let Dr. Viper White, can you hear us yet, Dr. White? Can't hear me. You can relay to him that we
Yeah.
want him to introduce the show.
Yes,
And the
Dr. White.
topic.
Can you
I
hear?
I
Okay,
can't
what
hear
I
him.
want you to do is to log out and to log back in,
Okay.
Dr. White.
That usually
Yes, sir.
works. That's one way to
Yeah.
do it. Okay. Well, I know that we've got a great show topic today, and we wanted to share that with you. The Pan-African movement is energized by the Iranian defeat of Israel and the U.S. militarily in the Persian Gulf. And this is sending shockwaves and reverberations across the African continent because no one 3-4 months ago assumed or could think that the U.S. and Israel could be in such a predicament after just a few months of defiance by the Iranian state. It has given new light to the Palestinian movement and new breath to the movement of Hezbollah in Lebanon as well, and has also certainly made it a lot easier for the Houthis and Yemen and many other aligned groups in that axis of power across the Middle East that is standing against what they consider to be repression and essentially an onslaught that was definitely not something expected from the United States, but certainly was expected of Israel. Now, people differentiate all the time between Israel and the United States, and they try to create these distinctions. And of course, it is policy for Israel and the United States to create distinctions. I'll tell you what the distinction really is. The distinction is the U.S. has 50 states, you think. It really has 51 states. That 51st state is Israel. Israel is as connected to the U.S. in terms of what they can do from a policy standpoint, a military standpoint, and even a just political positioning. They are as close to U.S. as any state in the U.S. is. Israel does not make a move unless those moves are verified and codified in Washington. It's just no such thing. You cannot operate a state in a vacuum in the middle of nowhere and call yourself autonomous, even if you've got military weapons stationed there. They are the U.S.'s military weapons. The U.S. has given Israel cover to do what it does throughout its existence. Anyone who does not understand that, please study it, get a grip on it, understand it. That's how we are able to go forward here on the Muslim street. Dr. White, can you hear me now?
I hear you now. You know,
All right,
this is why we should learn several languages, including how to read lips.
Oh yeah. We can do
I
that.
saw you smiling. I saw you doing your thing, but I couldn't understand.
Yes, what I said. I was telling you to read my lips.
Yeah, well, I know you're dropping the hammer. I know you're dropping the hammer. I just knew that. So, but I hear you now, and I agree with you 100% in all what you have said. The question, though, for many Americans, is that how did Israel become such a powerful interest in American policy? You see, because Americans ask, how is this? How did it happen? And we have to look at maybe 3 or 4 areas how this happened. One, the United States and Israel call themselves having a strategic military alliance, okay, alignment. That is that it's no secret to them that they both want to be powerful interests in the Middle East, and they both practice the concept of American Israeli hegemony, all right, that everyone else have to submit. And they've been following this course, this action for many, many, many decades. Then along with that, again, how did they become so interested and so strong? And it's because the Israeli lobby and the policies and the politicking in the United States is second to none. AIPAC invests heavily in lobbying political candidates on both sides. And so both parties maintain a bipartisan support for Israel, which gives Israel a carte blanche to do what they want to do and to direct American policy in that perspective. Then you have to look at the element of ideological and cultural ties. Now, while Israelis may call themselves Semitic people, in their thinking, in their way of action, they see themselves as white Americans. All right. So therefore, they see themselves as white Americans connected to this element of white democracy that must be held, must be uplifted, must practice an element of Zionism and suppress everyone else. And the third level is geopolitical proxies. All right. Israel and America are proxies to each other to continue their policies. And the question is now, Brother Art, is how do we break it up? That is the billion-dollar question, because we're talking about it. We see the world is aligning against Israel and the United States, but they're still in power. And I think that really brings up the whole issue of your topic today. Pan-Africanist movement is energized by the Iranian defeat of the United States and Israel. I would add to that statement that is the Pan-African movement energized, all right, by what is taking place.
It is definitely
and if it is, we have to look at it very carefully, because there are 3 schools, right, of the Pan-Africanist movement. Africa is divided in at least 3 different ways, all right? You see one group in the Horn of Africa, which is, Somalia, Somaliland, Tanzania, Kenya, Djibouti, and they have come outwardly and stated that, one, they align with Western interests. They have condemned Iran and their attack, and for their so-called destabilizing the world's economy and the flow of oil. Then you have another school out of West Africa, the Sahel, and they're arguing a little bit that, listen, we need to just wait a little bit. We need to use diplomacy.
No, we're not going to wait.
I can't hear you again.
We're not going to wait.
I'm sorry, I can't
going to wait. Okay. Well, what I'm saying is that
maybe it's a good thing I can't hear.
No, it is. It's okay. You should hear this.
I think I'm going to try another.
Go ahead and try
another device.
Go ahead and try to dial in, and I'll talk to my people over here. Africa,
he can't hear you.
Around the world.
I'm going to try another device.
We got it.
Give me a second.
Ask him to go ahead and
I'm going to get off of this device because I don't know.
I believe that we can simplify this. We should simplify this. It is not about the complexities of how across Africa we've got all of these divisions of thinking and thought. This is a moment that is epic in history. The African continent is having an opportunity now to not only see a vision of its own independence and liberation, but it is seeing a vision and a blueprint as to how to get there. And Iran is showing the way, just as 30, 40 years ago, Southern Africa and the Patriotic Front there began to illustrate and show the way. Getting back to the Israeli U.S. alliance, it really cannot be viewed in more complexity than what I outlined earlier. The Israeli state is not an autonomous state. It is a vassal state. It is part and parcel of the United States, the NATO alliance, the British, the Pax Americana, whatever you want to call it. It's part of a white supremacist movement that is based in the West and has fed the Israeli state to make them even feel not only that they are a white supremacist enclave in a black and dark-skinned pool of populations, but they also feel that they are a political state that can separate themselves as well. But that, again, without American tax dollars and without American armaments and American use of military, Israel cannot operate autonomously and cannot operate on its own. It dare not do that. So don't believe the hype. Don't believe the nonsense. Don't believe that Israel occupies any kind of independent state in anybody else's mind, except for the people who are just willfully naive, at least. And I'll leave it at that. Getting over into the African continent. Dr. White, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank God for
excellent. I'm glad you're back. Yes. I want to just go through a little bit of the military readiness of the African continent to get an understanding. You mentioned the Sahel states a little earlier, and there are amazing military forces. They're being funded and financed, and that's what we really have to watch on the African continent is who's paying these armies. The largest army on the African continent. Do you know who has the largest army on the African continent, Dr. White?
I would think the United States.
Well, no, I meant of African states.
African states.
Mm-hmm. I'll let you know.
Egypt.
Excuse me?
Egypt, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Egypt has 438,000 soldiers who are under arms. But who finances the Egypt of today? Where do they get their funding from? That's the question. I'm not asking you to answer it, but these are things that we have to watch. We have, South Africa has a relatively small force, even though it has an equivalent population to Egypt, has 74,000 troops that are under arms. Nigeria is a large army. It has 223,000 men under arms. And keep in mind, if you've got a fighting force of 500,000, you are considered to be one of the most prominent armies and military forces in the world. If you've got 500,000 or more under, but combined the states of Congo, Morocco, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria have well beyond 1 million troops. So we are certainly, from a military standpoint, we've got the manpower and the woman power. I don't want to leave women out of this. Go ahead.
But the problem is that they don't have a real directive and strategy. And they're being pulled by so many forces. For example, when you go to the Sahel, all right, they are connected to the interests of at least three major powers, right? The United States, China, all right, and as well as many of the Gulf states.
No, 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 not true. Not
Let me finish. Let me finish first.
okay, but you mentioned China, and that's a misnomer that people
And
have.
then they have interest in reference to technology. Then they have interest in reference to education. The point is that even though they may have the manpower, they stranglehold each other themselves because they cannot go one way or another without polarizing one of their major interests. So therefore, they have people, they have strength, but they don't have what I call the fuel to make a move anywhere. And that is why the states, the Sahel states, have become really lukewarm in reference to Iran. They keep talking about diplomacy. They talk about de-escalation. They have taken an element of neutrality. And with that element of neutrality, it really means they're doing nothing. And that is a directive. That is decided upon them. As opposed to South Africa. South Africa is also taking an element of diplomacy, but since apartheid, they have become what you call the so-called voice person, the voice of the global South. So therefore, they're trying to position themselves to look at things in a strong diplomatic way, going through the UN. Then again through the East Africa. All right, as I stated earlier, they're full locked in with the West and Israel because of their geographical location. The Red Sea and all of that. They need that maritime trade, and they're close and they're afraid. So therefore, when we talk about the element of Pan-Africanism on the continent in reference to Iran, we see a divided continent that is really unsure of what position they want to take because of all these other interests. All right.
Let me just share. There is no central command in Africa. That is true, but there is one forming. There's one forming in the Sahel states, and there's been an effort for years in the AU to form some kind of African central command that coordinates all of these different countries, all of these different militaries to do something in unity. Sometimes it's been around the UN and under the UN auspices to try to deal with a conflict in one place or another, but it has been something that has been developing. I look at what we need to think about is a pre February 28th of this month look at Africa. And I think that that's mostly what you're describing is what was going on pre 60 days ago. And you have to look at where Africa is today and the changes that are taking place on the continent right now as we speak, and those that will shape up because of the moves that Africa makes right now for the future. And those are going to be radically different. You also have to separate and have an understanding of the distinction between the African leadership and the African people. The African people and the African leadership have always been in.
Are you talking about the political leadership or the grassroots leadership?
I'm talking about the political leadership that holds the power that you're describing. You're talking about these policy issues and how Africa seems to move by political forces from the outside. Those are things that are being done by a group of people who are empowered, who occupy positions, but don't necessarily follow what their people are thinking or understanding about their own development. They're really trying to do the wishes or carry forth the wishes of those outside forces, mostly and mainly Western ideologies. and Western forces, U.S. and Europe, and colonial ties are still extremely strong in Africa. The only place where those ties have really been broken are in some of the Sahel states, and then also some of the states from the African Union that go back traditionally. I do count South Africa among those African nations, Namibia, Mozambique, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, of course, were part of the old Portuguese. The last three that I mentioned were part of the old Portuguese colonial system. That system evaporated very quickly, but those that are still in the Francophone and the Europhone, or the British or English speaking group, have lagged a bit behind. They're still kind of dependent on the crown, and they still take their hats off and welcome the queen and the monarchy into Africa. And you see these little signs of who is independent and who is unsure of their ability to actually exercise freedom and independence. We need to focus on those states that are exercising and focusing on actual independence and what they do to start to build alliances. I love what the Sahel states are doing in Mali and Guinea-Bissau, not Guinea-Bissau, but Burkina Faso and Niger, and to a lesser extent, Guinea, to coalesce and say, we're going to be one state. We're going to be a united front. We're going to be a united group of states that help each other and move in concert. And I think that's critical. That is the future of Africa. And I think that that's where we need to pay most attention to in terms of development. Do you agree?
I do agree. I lost visual for some reason. I don't know if you still see me. But I agree with a lot. But the problem that we have there is that we have to create within Africa a real leadership class within the political group that's going to be much more aggressive in their stance, because the schizophrenic, I don't know what to do or what we should do, it's not going to work any longer. Because if Africa is going to be a major force in the 21st century, and we can talk all day long about the resources we have there and the number of people we have there and the education that is brewing there, but until we get a real political identity on the world on the world stage, we're just going to be a second-rate marginal power in the future.
And that's okay. It's okay for us to be second rate. It's okay for us to be second rate at this point because we're still developing. But as long as we're moving in the direction of being a first rate power, I'm good. I think most of us are good. You said, when you speak of we need to do X, Y, and Z. Are you talking about the Pan-African community? Are you talking about the Islamic world? Who are you speaking of when you say we?
I'm speaking about primarily the Pan-Africanist community. With the Islamic world, again, that's kind of schizophrenic as well. The Islamic world, even though Iran has done a tremendous amount with the spreading of Shiaism in the Horn, as well as in Nigeria, and they have done a good job in ensuring their cultural norms and their technology and so forth. We can't continue to go just on that. Remember, even though the Islamic world and the African world is connected because of our shared fight against colonialism, our shared fight against imperialism, our shared fight against European and American hegemony, we both have our own interest, all right? And one interest cannot be dominant over the other. So while they're pushing their interest, which is good, and I'm a Muslim, it is imperative that the Africans push our interests. For example, what is the interest of the African world? Is it just the interest of, well, we're here and we're standing up and recognize us? Or is it something whereby we have an interest with economic control, economic trade, economic development, spreading our hegemony, our ways throughout the world, not just in dance and trinkets, and culture, but how do we think? Who are we? I mean, right now, if you take three different Africans, one from Ghana, one from Nigeria, and one from Senegal, and ask them who they are and what they are, you get three different answers because there is not a code there of real understanding. And there's not a code of understanding and creating our interest. And we as African Americans, we're just as schizophrenic too. Because when we talk about the Pan-Africanist movement here, I mean, we can't recognize any real leaders. And the ones that we recognize are old and feeble. And all they do is talk about either Kwanzaa or what we should do. We haven't even recognized, we haven't even developed our ideas of an interest in reference to Pan-Africanism.
Well, once again, the schizophrenia that you speak of is real, and it will be real as long as we don't control the means of identifying what that schizophrenia is based on, what it is based in, and who is promoting it for what reason. We look at media, for example. You're not going to see anyone finding or seeking out the Pan-African leadership in this country and sticking a camera in their face and a microphone under their nose and asking them what their opinions are. Those people are never going to be talked to. So I would submit that we have a much more vibrant leadership among young people, and we see evidence of it every day. We have the most learned group of young people coming up behind those of us who would consider themselves to be part of the Black intelligentsia of the 60s and the 70s and the forward movement, civil rights, Black power movement, whatever you want to call it. We have developed a very strong group of young people who are intelligent, who are learned about their research, who know more in their just reflective memory than we even had a chance to glean out of our everyday discussions back when we were rapping and trying to figure it out as young people. They have a lot more equipment than we had, is what I'm saying. So I look forward to this generation developing, and they'll get beyond the Kwanzas and the nonsense of some of the petty Pan-African ideas of those. There are a lot of counterfeit suggestions and people and actors who are out there purporting to try and essentially co-opt the Pan-African movement and define it in their own image for their own purposes. And I think that young people and us older people too, we will continue to be able to recognize and point those things out and move forward. So I agree with you. This is the Muslim street. You're talking about something that's really powerful, and we would invite you in the audience to hit the like button, share this app. And, I watch people do this all the time, this hit that like button and share this. But do we really know how to make a site grow? We know the little traditions. I know the broadcast where we just say, hey, tell a friend, let somebody listen. I don't like all the proactive stuff that we have to do, but we do have to affect the algorithms. So if you hit the like button and the share button, you help this program grow and amass an audience much quicker. and it will then become more visible. Unfortunately, that's the rules of the current social media platform. But you were going to say something, Dr. White.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to the listeners that listen, what Arch is doing, what Brother Arch is doing, what Brother Lance is doing, what Brother Malik is doing, what we're doing, we're building a movement. All right. And we cannot build a movement without your support. You know,
Well, yeah.
it's one thing to talk about, this is what we're doing. It's another thing is to support it. And that's where we lack behind. And fall
Have you
behind.
ever watched a commercial break on television?
What is that?
Have you ever watched a commercial break on television?
Yes, sir.
Well, I did a commercial. Now you're going to do the same commercial right after.
Okay, I guess I'm being like one of the ministers, right?
Save it. You come back to it later. But no, let's get back to the program here.
Okay, but anyway, to Art, if I have to go to another so-called Pan-Africanist event, and they start off with this libation thing, and calling the elders, I'm going to scream. What we need to be doing is to focus on the issues that brings us together that can create power. For example, we have at least 8 automobile makers in Africa. We have one in Nigeria, another one in Ghana, and one in Kenya, one in Morocco, one in Tunisia. In the last 8 to 9 years, I've been trying to work with one out of Nigeria, and also motors to bring to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot get the support. We cannot get the help.
From who?
If we were really concerned about this Pan-Africanism, all right, we would focus on things like that. For example, years ago, you had Korean motors. They were looked upon as being just a shabby type of automobile industry. But look at it now. They have Genesis. Years before that, you had Japanese cars, Toyota. They were looked upon as being a box on wheels. Look at them now. It lays the foundation for the strength of their country, of their region, and of the people who live in the diaspora. That's where we need to start looking at. But we're not looking at those things because it's even now we talk about politics and geopolitics. Most of our people don't have a clue as to what is taking place, and our leadership that is in Pan-Africanist thought are not doing their job. You know, there's no mentioning of what we're talking about. That listen, America's war and Israel's war in the Middle East is against humanity. It's a Holocaust. We're not talking about influencing and pushing our countries in the Caribbean, in Africa, to unite under one banner to pull their diplomats and to cut their ties. We're not doing nothing like that, which makes us a very feeble people when it comes down to politics and economics.
Man, you are sure hard on our people. Boy, I'm telling you, you just beat me. I feel depressed listening to you talk about how bad a shape we were in. I don't see that. I see the glass as being half full, and I'm not into emptying it here. We've come a long way from 1960 and the independence rebellions and the fights and the struggles. I watched the Angolan military, the MPLA in Angola do the things that it did to change and adjust and free the people of that region. I watched how Cuba was ready to come to their aid, in fact, did come to their aid to help them stop a 400 tank assault that was sweeping across the Namib Desert to destroy Angola. And that tank movement led by the apartheid South African movement was crushed and repelled by the Angolans, the Africans, the Mozambicans in combination. The Patriotic Front with the Cuban military to thwart that and stop that assault from coming. It's been incredible what happened in Zimbabwe, what happened later in South Africa to free those countries. I never would have suspected back in the 70s that South Africa would be free in my lifetime, much less any time going forward. But it happened a long time ago. And so we're new, relatively burgeoning African freedom movements across the continent, and we're also freed to do things in the rest of the diaspora and in other countries, and even here in the United States, because of what has been achieved in Africa. So we have to see ourselves as a unit and as a unified movement internationally, and not dissect every little section and corner into something that works, that more enables and works to the benefit of our colonizers, our former oppressors, those people who even would really try and reverse the progress that's been made. And I don't want to give them any more fuel or fodder, and I don't think you intend to either. But
I don't want to do that, but we have to speak the truth. For example, when you talk about the 1970s, there are several things that was going on that gave us ammunition and strength. First, we had Black entertainers touring Africa. We had Bob Marley touring Africa, James Brown touring Africa, Aretha Franklin touring Africa. We had Muhammad Ali, George Foreman doing a fight in Africa. We had a lot of activities going on that was spreading the concept of Pan-Africanism through their culture, through their music, through their political songs. That's important. And then we had a connection of the leadership in South Africa, in Africa. Now we don't have that right now. For example, a few weeks ago, you had Julius Malema, all right, one of the greatest voices in South Africa, one of the greatest voices in Africa. All right, he was just sentenced to jail for 5 years for trumped-up charges of having a weapon. That's like what they do to us here. I haven't heard not one major leader, not one Pan-Africanist that really speak to this issue and the importance of this issue, of this man. It happened. He's lost. There's no connection like that. Even now, we talk about Colonel Gaddafi, what he used to do. When he was on the scene, most of these people who call themselves Pan-Africanists, Kaminga and all the others, they condemn Gaddafi. All right, they say, oh, he's no good, he's anti-American, all this type of nonsense. Yes, I am hard on our people. I am hard on our leadership. It's not about how far we have come. It's about where we are now and how we're going to be progressive to change the trajectory of what we have to do and where we have to go as a people if we're going to be successful.
Exactly. And I agree with that. I agree that it is about where we are now and where we go in the future. And that's where we're going to focus here on the Muslim Street. We want to take you with us. Come along, bring your friends, make sure that they know that this particular podcast is active and we have access to it. And let's expand and grow that access as we go forward. You mentioned a couple of really important things there, brother. First, I would say that entertainers are not our leaders. They never have been. We mistake popularity sometimes for being a voice or being a leader among our people, and it has never been true. Not even going back as far as the people like Oscar Micheaux and Paul Robeson, even though those were very, very strong leadership elements, they would never admit or would never even accept the yoke of being leaders of the Pan-African movement, African American communities. They didn't want that responsibility. Malcolm always said, Lena Horne and Sammy Davis Jr. and Dick Gregory and those people who were being postured as leaders, they weren't our leaders. They weren't our thought leaders. They weren't our real leaders. They weren't those who could articulate what was actually coming from the community. They were entertainers. Don't mistake entertainers for leaders.
Never. I don't think I was saying that they were leaders.
No, I know you weren't. I'm just saying this to our audience, and I'm speaking through your points to them to make sure that they don't fall into the same rhythm and trap, because we can't keep competing the same mistakes over and over again and think that we're getting somewhere. These are not leaders. Malema started as an entertainer. He started as a voice in the back of the room in some circles within South Africa, and was not taken seriously because of his not only how he spoke and how he came into the movement, but where he came from. He was part of Winnie Mandela's inner circle of soccer team youth, and came out of a movement that had some very questionable orientations and development. And that's not to say that any of these leadership figures can grow into being something important. I wish Malema all the success in the world, and I definitely support him. I do not think he needs to be vilified and ostracized and put in jail any more than I think Chris Hani, who was the leader of the Communist Party in South Africa, should have been assassinated in his driveway, sort of like Medgar Evers was in this country, and killed. And that was in the early 90s that Chris Hani lost his life. They named the hospital in Soweto after Chris Hani. It's called the Chris Hani Hospital, and still is to this day. We don't really hear from the strong Pan-African leaders because no one will give them that kind of attention. Why would they? It's against the ideal of the oppressor to give voice to the leadership of the oppressed. They want to kill those people. They want to destroy those people, and they will. Karenga has never been a leadership figure in the Pan-Africanist movement or any other kind of movement. Kwanzaa is always been a joke. I'm sorry, all my Pan-African people who feel that they need to pour libations and to play those games and invent a new Christmas for people in this country. Karenga was a CIA agent. He was recruited to thwart the Black Panther Party. His group, US, was a direct contrarian group that was pitted against the Black Panthers. They were responsible for Bunchy Carter's death, who was one of the leaders of the Black Panther Party, and the Los Angeles area assassination, and in a shootout with Ron Karenga and us, on the UCLA campus for nothing, because they were just sent in to do that. We have to stop following. Kwanzaa isn't celebrated in Africa. No place in Africa are you going to find anything to do with Kwanzaa. So it is not something that was taken from Africa. It was something that came out of Ron Karenga's head because he needed to find some way to stay relevant, and that was his movement to do that. So, check it out, read it, research it, quit being tricked into thinking that people who are entertainers and are personality opportunists quit falling into the trap of saying, "Oh, well, these must be leaders because they're all over the place." They're relevant because they're heard, they're popular. They're not like people that you would hear like Dr. White. But go ahead, brother.
Well, and I agree with you. And we as intellectuals and activists and scholars, we have to do a better job in presenting the great Pan-Africanist leaders of Africa to our people to study. For example, Ibrahim Traoré. I mean, he's a tremendous man, Burkina Faso. I mean, he is doing tremendous things. The CIA has been trying to get him in the last couple of years. We have Ousmane Sonko out of Senegal. Brilliant speaker, brilliant thinker, a major voice of Pan-Africanism. You know, calls for the removal of foreign bases from his country. Then we have Assimi Goïta out of Mali. You know, he's the architect of the Confederation of Sahel States. We got to look at these people. But now I'm going to give to you, Brother Art, a word salad, right? I'm going to say a couple of names of the movement, so-called leaders in our country right now. And what do you think about them as being part of this Pan-Africanist movement? The first one I would mention is Malik Zulu Shabazz. You know him?
Yes, I do know Malik personally. But before we go to Pan-African, on this side of the continent, you left out Ericana Chambro. She is one of the creative voices for what is happening now in the Sahel. I really think that what we see in the Sahel possibly could not have happened had she not been so outspoken against the French and the structure of the French post-colonial system, neo-colonial system that was present in those countries. She spoke out at the UN as the ambassador to the US and or the ambassador to the UN on behalf of the AU, and did so very well. She was fired because that was engineered by the Europeans. Their strength and their ability to reach into our movement and destroy things in our movement is not to be underestimated. So that's why what has just happened in Iran is so important. And this development is such a blueprint for how African countries can proceed to develop from a leadership standpoint and move to unite the continent and unite us, lead the unity that we need in a Pan-African in a Pan-African way. So you mentioned Malik Shabazz. I think he is a very strong voice. I have a lot of respect for that brother, and I've been in marches with him from coast to coast, and I think he is a great lawyer and a person who can articulate at any point what is necessary to move the needle, so to speak, for African Americans. And I can probably think of, another couple of dozen of leaders in this country who we do not give a microphone to, who deserve to speak. I mean, we need to ask ourselves, who would we have speak for us? Who would you allow to speak for you? Who would you trust to articulate what your concerns were that would affect your family, in your house, in your neighborhood, in your country? And those are the people that we need to amplify, and we need to advance as leaders in our community. But we don't get to do that because we don't get to make those choices. We leave it to the media, we leave it to the political establishment to pick leaders for us. So we wind up with Jasmine Crockett and Jeffries and these people like those in the Black Caucus who don't lead anybody. They just got the most votes because somebody gave them a bunch of money and they were able to buy the ticket and curry some favor because they were the lesser of two evils when somebody went in the booth to pull the lever. So you need to get beyond the whole what is identified as leadership among us.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that means that at the local level, we have to identify individuals at the local level who are speaking on this interest and highlight them. Because if not, again, as you stated, the political establishment, the media, will decide who speaks for you.
Exactly.
Because there's several people. I mean, for example, I believe I think that the words of Dr. Gail Rigobert out of the Caribbean. He is the advisor of the Caribbean Affairs Association to the Pan-Africanist Council. I mean, he's a very, very strong voice. He is saying some tremendous things of uniting the Caribbean with the African soil, so that we can present a common front within the international world. We have people like Horace Campbell of the global Pan-Africanist movement. He is a voice that many people do not hear about, but he is also recognizable and important. And then you have Mia Motley out of Barbados. Again, a strong, consistent voice. And in the United States, I don't know many. I mean, you mentioned about Malik Zulu Shabazz. Of course, we know his work. He is a disciple of Khalid Muhammad.
You call it. Mm-hmm.
I cannot say right now if is he as influential and as consistent as our brother Khalid. We have to see where that ends up. But we also have, I don't know, I don't know if Cornell X down in Texas, I don't know if he's still a Pan-Africanist, or did he just change completely into becoming just a political egghead.
Well, this is a good idea for our show next week. We can have Malik Aziz, another great leader in our Pan-African movement, who is part of this inner circle and staff for this particular show. We can build on that list of leaders and thought leaders that address Pan-African issues in such a way that it makes us all not only respective of the content and the issues of the Pan-African movement and can identify what those are, but are also very serious spokespeople who we should be listening to and should be following. And not every person that is going to be postured as a leader in the community is going to be fully developed. We have to understand that even the brightest leaders that we can look back in history and say, yes, there was Lumumba, and there was Nkrumah, and there was Elijah Muhammad, and there was Malcolm X, and there's Farrakhan, and there's, this person or that person. Not all of those people were fully developed in their leadership capabilities. No one is finished with their growth process until God is finished with them in that process, or until they come into alignment with what the movement is really asking of them. We have to allow people room to grow. So just because someone isn't the ideal leader today, maybe in another 2 or 3 years, they'll be the perfect person for that particular job. In the case of Malema, or in the case of Assimi Goïta, or Ibrahim Traoré, for that matter. Even Cyril Ramaphosa has some room to grow and rethink his positioning, because he came out of the South African labor movement. He used to lead the miners and did so very successfully and effectively under the leadership of the ANC to bring about freedom in South Africa. The freedom movement in South Africa is not fully developed. It hasn't gone to where it needs to go. It's wrestling with xenophobia and running people. I mean, it's still caught up in the capitalist game that is played on Africa and across the continent to divide and conquer. And they've just developed an economic way to do that, and that's all this xenophobic movement is a way. That's why we need to do away with all borders, and we need to unify the African continent so that any place anybody wants to live as an African should be made available. If I, as an African who was this, I'm descendant of slaves, I'm a descendant of people who were removed from the continent. If I wanted to go back to the continent, where would I go? I wouldn't even know where to begin to look, as most of us would be also put in that position. So I know we're wrapping up, but just wanted to make sure that we understood or understand that we can't beat up on each other and beat up on ourselves too badly, because we are still a work in progress, and we're going to get there if we're going to get there whether we do this or not, but we have to give ourselves a chance to grow.
And last thing I want to make mention in this conversation is something that we need to talk about later on. And that is, why did the United Nations years ago declare that Africa, any country in Africa, would never have nuclear energy? That is something that we have to look at, something that is very, very interesting. And that, when South Africa ended apartheid, one of the first things that the international community did was dismantle their nuclear facilities. That is something to look at. Last thing, this is a great conversation. I'm sorry to the viewers. I lost visuals, so I could not see the chats as to what was coming in. I'm sure we had a number of people who wanted to ask questions, but keep on listening to us. Keep on staying tuned. And if it's the will of God, inshallah, we will handle those questions next week on another format. And just want to remember that keep on reading the book. Pick up the book, Blacklisted: The Price of Speaking Truth. My story and our story at so many fronts.
Can I speak? Can I speak
yes.
real quickly to the nuclear issue in Africa? Nuclear power is still nuclear power. It creates waste. It creates things that are destructive for 500 years once you create all of that waste. And I certainly don't like the idea of Africa being a contributor to that sense. The nuclear weapons issue in South Africa was something that was resolved. Nelson Mandela said, let's scrub that whole thing and take those nuclear weapons that South Africa had at the time, which they got from Israel and developed in secret. But they gave up nuclear weapons at that point. And I think that was a responsible thing to consider, but it needs to be considered in context with where Africa is headed in the future. We need to be more thoughtful.
It's something that we have to talk about, and inshallah we will. And I want to thank you for everyone for listening, staying tuned to the Muslim Street, as Brother Art stated. Hit those subscription. Help us stay in tune. If you have any questions or any concerns, or you want a topic that you would like to hear about, just jot us a note, and we'll bring them up. May God bless you, and Brother Art, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. See you next week.
Always.
Sir.